Right around the corner as you walk in is the actual Open Meeting Act. If you would, I'm going to ask that you stand with us for a moment of silence and as well, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll continue with roll call.
Granquist.
Here.
Langy.
Here.
Merrill.
Here.
Clausen.
Here.
Murin. Moaning.
Here.
Faust. File.
Here.
And I'm going to let Beth give you a little bit of information before we tear right into the action items.
Just for clarification, the Norfolk Daily News published the City Council meeting notice as of Monday, July 5th, 2016, instead of Tuesday, July 5th, 2016. After staff contacted the newspaper, the Daily News updated their website on Saturday, July 2nd to reflect the correct meeting date and day as Tuesday, July 5th, 2016 for the City Council meeting. All of the meeting notices for the public hearings this evening were correctly noticed as Tuesday, July 5th, 2016. No inquiries were received by city staff from the public regarding confusion about the meeting time. City staff feel the meeting notice sufficiently complies with state statute regulations. However, if any applicant wishes to delay their public hearing until the July 18th, 2016 meeting, please let us know now before we proceed with your public hearing. Are there any questions? It's just for clarification. Okay.
So it is Tuesday, in case you're wondering, folks. It is Tuesday, so as long as everybody's okay with that, then we'll go forward, and I'm going to ask for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
All right, a motion with a second to approve the consent agenda as provided. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative.
Okay, and as well, I'm looking for approval of the very full agenda presented you.
So move, Your Honor. Second.
Motion with a second to approve the full agenda. Again, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative.
Okay, public hearings tonight. We're going to start off with a public hearing at the request of Gary and Gina Allstat for a hard surfacing waiver on property at 4501 Blaine Street. I'm going to open this hearing, and why does it note Beth here? Are you speaking to this? No. Are you, Val? I don't know. If you would, please.
Yes, tonight's hard surfacing waiver is for 4501 Blaine Street. I think you saw in your agenda packet that the resolution, Clint helped me explain a little bit of the history of this because it did go before Planning Commission 2 weeks ago, and there was a bit of confusion at the end after there was a motion with a second to approve the hard surface as to what exactly the request was for. Because 4501 connects to a private road that is gravel. And towards the end, they were thinking that they were also asking for a hard surfacing waiver for the private road. But that is not required since it's a separate parcel, 4501, and the reason that the hard surfacing waiver is being brought before is because a building permit has been pulled. And then that requires the ingress egress to be paved, and that's what the relief is requested for tonight, for just that connection between the gravel street of Blaine, which is a private road, and where the garage then connects onto the property. I don't know if there's any questions.
Any questions at all for Val, council? Okay, this is a public hearing. If there's anyone that wants to come forward and speak to this. I will ask you to sign in for us and state your name.
My name is Fritz Bartel. I'm a lawyer in Norfolk, Nebraska. I'm appearing on behalf of Gary Allstat. I don't have any specific comments other than what was already said, so I just wanted to come up and make myself available if anyone had any questions.
Appreciate that. So while he's standing before you, council, any questions or anything of him?
Okay.
Okay, I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Again, a public hearing. Is there anyone else that wants to come forward that may have question or comments? If not, then I will close the public hearing. And any further discussion from this group? If not, I'm going to, oops, we do have a planning commission report, right, Beth?
Yes. On June 21st, 2016, the Norfolk Planning Commission reviewed the application for modification of hard surfacing requirement submitted by Gina and Gary Alstad. The Planning Commission made a motion with a second to approve the waiver. Then questions were asked by the applicant's representative as to what was included in the motion. After discussion and review of the application, the motion to recommend approval was denied on a 0-8 vote. City staff met with the applicant and his representative on June 22nd to clarify the request. The applicant decided to ask the Planning Commission Subcommittee to review the request and submit a recommendation rather than resubmit the same application. The request for the hard surfacing modification for the property located at 4501 Blaine Street was reviewed and unanimously recommended for approval by the Planning Commission Subcommittee members Brian Lundy, Sue Beckman, Dan Spray, and Frank Arns on June 29, 2016, with the stipulation that when Blaine Street is paved in front of the property's ingress-egress drive, the owners would have 1 year to complete the hard surfacing requirement.
Okay, and with that, I would ask for consideration of Resolution 2016-23, approving the hard servicing waiver for Gina and Gary Alstad on that property at 4501 Blaine.
Your Honor, I'd offer Resolution 2016-23 for consideration.
Second.
A motion with a second. Any further discussion? If not, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, Resolution 2016-23 is adopted.
Okay. Next on the agenda is a public hearing to consider the feasibility of an amendment to the Norfolk Comprehensive Plan for commercial to high-density residential on property located at 503 North 4th Street. And as well, I'm going to tie in the public hearing at the request of Charles C. Knake and Leon P. Becker to consider a zoning change from C1 Local Business District to R3 Multiple Family Residential on property at 503 North 4th Street. So with that, both public hearings are open. We'll have discussion. And do you want to start this one off too, Val?
I will, thank you.
Okay.
Just a little history. This is,
Hey, Val,
yeah,
pull your mic to you a little bit so we...
a little history on this piece of property. It's just north of the post office. And a few years ago, the same owners requested it from R3 to C1. And so now that they actually have a builder, I believe, who wants to put apartments on that, they're asking to go back to R3 again. So the surrounding neighborhood is generally R3 with a little bit of OD to the west of them and then I-1 to the south. We can see it on the screen if you'd like to see the piece of property. It's this piece of C1 right here.
Very good. Any questions, council, for her? Either one of you two want to come forward and speak to this at all? Pete, Casey? We don't want you to come and just sit, so we have you here.
Charles C. Kinnick.
Charles, I'm sorry.
Just basically, if anybody has any questions, I have talked to the developers as far as what they're planning on putting in there, so we have a pretty good idea. The rents that they're looking at charging will be market rate rent, no subsidized housing at this point. They hope not, anyway. But anyway, I would be more than glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Charles here? If not, Casey?
Approximately how many units do you know at this time?
16, I believe. Two 8 and 8, two 8 plexes.
Great. Any other questions? Anyone? Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. Anyone else that wants to come forward and speak to this or may have questions? If not, then, Beth, I will close the public hearings, and we will look for the Planning Commission report on the amendment to the comp plan first.
Okay, the Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on June 21st, 2016, to consider the comp plan amendment at 503 North 4th Street and recommend approval on an 8-0 vote.
Okay, and with that,
Then, do you want me to go ahead with the other one right now?
if you want to do that, that's fine.
And then the, if I can get there. Planning Commission also held a public hearing on June 21st at the request of Charles Knaik and Leon Becker for zoning change on the 503 North 4th Street property, and the Planning Commission recommends approval on an 8-0 vote.
Okay, and with that, I would ask for consideration of ordinance number 5400, amending the city comp plan from commercial to high-density residential on property located at 503 North 4th Street.
Your Honor, I move consideration of ordinance 5400.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. No further discussion? We had short titles on both of these, right, Beth?
Just on the one right now, the 54.
Okay.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the future land use map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
And if you would, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5400 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move that we consider suspending the rules and pass an ordinance 5400 on second and third reading.
Second.
All right, we have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 5400 on both second and third. No further discussion? I would ask for your vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5400 carries on second and third.
Okay, and with that, consideration of ordinance number 5401, it would be approving the zone change from C1 local business to R3 multiple family residential on property at 503 North 4th Street.
Your Honor, I move consideration of ordinance 5401 on first reading.
Second.
A motion with a second. Any discussion? If not, short title, Beth?
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
And if you will vote, please.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5401 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move that we suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 5401 on second and third.
Second.
We have a motion with a second to go forward, suspending the rules and pass ordinance number 5401 on second and third. Again, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5401 carries on second and third.
All right. And next is a public hearing to consider feasibility of an amendment to the comp plan from single-family residential to high-density residential on property located at 706 North 8th Street. And with that, in the same discussion would be the public hearing at the request of Gary L. Peterson and Nicole K. Peterson to consider the zoning change from R1 single-family to R3 multiple-family residential on property at 706 North 8th Street. And with that, I will open both public hearings and look for Val to once again begin us.
Thank you. This is associated with the 701 Maple Apartments. You can see on the screen
Thanks.
that they're already zoned R3, and there's this little piece of property here that they own also, that the house has been torn down. And that is the piece that we're talking about rezoning tonight, so that everything is zoned R3. and then we will combine them into one lot so that he can expand his parking onto that new piece of property there.
Okay. Any questions for Val as to what the purpose is here of the request?
So the ultimate plan, Val, when it all wraps on up, is that the lot lines will disappear in between in there? And that
Yeah,
become-
we're
big
gonna
lot.
make it like a one-lot plat to combine it all so that the lot lines will disappear and it'll all be one lot then.
Makes sense? A public hearing. Is there anyone out there that wants to come forward and speak to this? Again, if you would, we'll ask you to state your name and sign in for us.
My name is Gary Peterson. Me and my wife, Nicole Peterson, own the 701 Maple Apartments. The objective here for getting this zone to R3 from R1 is to add to our parking. And that is because we are next to the high school, Johnny Carson Theater area. One, the school is growing, and it seems like, but even before Christmas time, they're parked all the way up the street, and they start to park in our parking lot, which is one issue. The biggest issue is the students can't get out of the area quick enough, so what they do is go through my private property to go to the alley between there. After that, they go to through the alley and then back up 8th Street, so that the people that were in front of them before have to yield to these people, because it's sometimes hard getting out. To do that, they fly through my parking lot. And I've been on the windshield several times this year where they stop, you're taking their picture, and then they just accelerate, and you go over or under. I haven't had the opportunity to go under yet, and I don't want to do that. That's why we are asking to get this zone to R3. And what our plan is to go out probably anywhere from 80 to 100 foot on that property, and we will block the original drive that is on Maple. And there is a driveway that's in the middle of that lot right now, where the curb is cut. You can see where a garage used to be. That's where we want to use the approach. We kind of want to concrete up to that point. By getting that far, we think that they won't be trying to go through the parking lot. They'll be close enough to the intersection to get onto Queen City Boulevard. That's the reason we are going this route. We'll start there, keep going, to make it safer for my tenants. And as the students grow and they all have more cars all the time, I need parking for my tenants and the safety for my tenants. That's all I have for now. If you have any questions, I'd be more than willing or happy to answer for you.
Appreciate your being here. Gary, any questions at all, council? Anyone? Okay. Again, anyone else? Public hearing. And if you want to come forward and may have questions or address it? Okay. If not, Planning Commission report on this, Beth?
The Planning Commission held public hearings on June 21st, 2016 to consider the comp plan amendment and the zone change for the property at 706 North 8th Street, and they recommend approval on an 8-0 vote.
All right. And with that, I'm going to go forward and close both the hearings and look for consideration of ordinance number 5402, which would be amending the city's comp plan from single-family residential to high-density residential on property at 706 North 8th Street.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5402.
All right, consideration for has been offered. If no further discussion, I'm going to ask that you vote. Oh, short title. I'm sorry, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the future land use map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
And now, if you would vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5402 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5402 on second and third.
Second?
All right, you heard the motion with a second. Again, if no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5402 carries on second and third.
Okay. Next, let's see, is consideration of ordinance number 5403, approving the zoning change from R1 Single Family to R3. What did I do here?
You're right.
Okay, all right. Okay. On property located at 706 North 8th Street. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot.
Your Honor, I
That
move-
one's a zoning change, but
Got it, yeah.
Mhm.
These addresses. I'm sorry, sir.
I move consideration of ordinance 5403 on first reading.
Second.
All right, we have a motion with a second for consideration of ordinance 5403. We need a short title on this.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5403 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move that we suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 5403 on second and third.
Second.
All right, we have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5403 on second and third. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5403 carries on second and third.
All right, and next is a public hearing to consider the feasibility of an amendment to the Norfolk Comp Plan from mixed use to commercial on property located at 1206 Blaine Street. And as well, I'm tying 33 in there, the public hearing at the request of Renner Wrap and Graphics LLC to consider a zoning change from R2, 1 and 2 family residential, to C3, commercial service district on property at 1206 Blaine Street. Excuse me. Again, we'll open the public hearing and look to Val. Boy, it is your show tonight, Val.
Done? Aren't you tired of me yet?
Nope, nope.
Okay, yes, Renner Auto Body is requesting a rezone change because they are expanding. So you can see, this is Renner Auto Body currently, and this little brown roofed building right here is the 1206 Blaine Street. They do own that, and the building has been removed already. So that is just the strip that they are requesting to be C3 tonight. In the plans, I believe that the applicant is here too, that they're going to expand a building to the north and cross that property line probably 20 to 30 feet into that piece of property. We have discussed it with staff and the applicant about, since they are against C3 to R2 zoning, about fencing, buffering, and the landscaping requirements for that too.
Great. Okay. Public hearing. Anyone out there that wants to come forward and speak to this?
I'm Doug Hutman. I'm the owner of Renner Auto Body and Renner Wraps, and
Okay.
here to answer any questions. And I did bring some drawings so we can show you the buffering, the fencing, the trees, green zone, all that good stuff.
Great.
So I don't know if you want to see them or not, but I sure have a couple of copies we can pass out if you'd like to.
I think that'd be great. It always is good for me to be able to have a visual, so I appreciate that.
Any questions from anybody?
So this must be north.
Any questions at all at this point, gentlemen, as you're, don't go far. All right.
More question for Val. If you've seen what he's presented here as far as the footprint that he's looking at putting on the site.
Yeah, that 110 by, I think, 125 is the expansion.
That's allowing us enough green space for our code stuff.
Yeah, I believe C3, you can go up to 80% impervious and 50% with building coverage. And so we discussed that with him too, about making sure that he was in those percentages. And then that 30 feet to the north will give him a lot of that impervious surface that he's required to.
Yeah.
That's part of the buffering landscape requirement.
Okay, that's, yeah, I was, we run up against that every once in a while with the landscape requirements, so along with the buffering.
Yep.
What is exactly landscaping requirements on a project like this?
You would need the 30 feet of green space with buffering, whether it's fencing or by plantings there between C3 and R2 to the north.
So either fencing or
Right. It can either be fencing 6 feet tall or landscape materials that within 3 years needs to be 80% opaque. I believe they decided to go with the fencing there. So it'll be a fence and then 30 feet of green space, and then their building can start.
Great. All right. Any other questions at all, council? Anyone else that has questions or may want to come forward and speak to this at all? Okay. If not, then, let's see, I would assume, have a planning commission report.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held public hearings on June 21st, 2016 to consider the amendment to the comp plan and the zoning change request at 1206 Blaine Street. The Planning Commission recommended approval on both requests on an 8-0 vote.
Okay, and with that, we'll close this public hearing, and I would ask for consideration of ordinance number 5404, amending the city's comp plan from mixed use to commercial on property located at 1206 Blaine Street.
Your Honor, I would offer for consideration ordinance number 5404.
second.
All right, we have a motion with a second for consideration of ordinance number 5404. Short title, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the future land use map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
All right, and if no further discussion, I would ask for your vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5404 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5404 on second and third.
Second that, Your Honor.
All right, we have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 5404 on second and third. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5404 carries on second and third.
And as well, with the public hearing, we have, what, another short title here, Beth? Am I right?
We have to get the ordinance introduction.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we better introduce the ordinance. Do I have someone giving me consideration of, what is it, number 5405?
Your Honor, I would offer for consideration ordinance number 5405.
Right. All right. A motion with a second to approve ordinance number 5405, which would be the zoning change from R2 to C3. Now, Beth, short title.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
And if you would please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5405 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules for ordinance 5405 on second and third.
Second.
All right, we have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 5405 on both second and third. No further discussion? Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5405 carries on second and third.
All right, next is a public hearing at the request of William Tyndall and John Halsley to consider a zoning change from A Ag District to SR Suburban on property located at 4202 Piedmont Avenue and as well 805 Terra Heights Drive. I will open the public hearing, and it looks to me like, Val, once again, you're on.
I brought this back up on the screen. We're in this area right here. Bill Thondell owns this piece of property and John Halsey here. There's currently zoned agriculture with SR surrounding them. Really, they're non-conforming lot sizes right now since they're anywhere from probably 1.5 to 4 acres between the two of them. And ag currently requires 20 acres per home site. So this zone change really brings them into conformity with the zone. But the reason they're coming in also is because you'll be seeing a 3-lot subdivision come in later on because Thondell's property will be split up and sold to Halsey and another person who's already zoned SR. So everybody's in the same zoning then, that the plat can then be done and the lot lines moved around. So that's really kind of the reason why we're doing the zone change right now. If there's any questions.
Okay. Anyone else that wants to come forward on this hearing and speak to it or may have questions regarding it? All right. Any questions at all, council, before we move forward?
Essentially, Val, what they're just doing is making it so that all of the other people that ultimately are going to purchase the property will be able to increase their lot sizes that way.
Yeah, everybody will now be SR, and really, Thondell is this long strip here, and he's probably going to be cutting it into third, you know, keeping his house as a third, the middle third going to John Halsey, and then the top third going to one of these houses up here. So that's what the plat will then do afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? All right, and no one else that wants to come forward? Beth, what do you got for us?
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on Tuesday, June 21st, 2016, to consider the zone change from A to SR on the property at 4202 Piedmont Avenue and 805 Terra Heights. Planning Commission recommended approval on an 8-0 vote.
All right, and with that, I'll close this hearing and look for consideration of ordinance number 5406, which would be approving the zone change from Ag to SR Suburban Residential District on the property at 4202 Piedmont Avenue and 805 Terra Heights Drive.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion of consideration of ordinance number 5406.
Second.
All right, we have a motion with a second. Short title, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5406 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5406 on second and third reading.
We have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5406 on second and third. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5406 carries on second and third.
Val, I'm wondering what we did without you. As we go on to a public hearing to consider the feasibility of an amendment to the Norfolk Comp Plan from single-family residential to medium density on the property generally located from 603 Oak Street through the 800 block of Oak Street. And as well, we're going to grab item 39, public hearing at the request of the Norfolk Housing Development Corporation to consider a zoning change from R1 Single Family and R3 to R2 1 and 2 family residential on the property located from 603 Oak Street through the 800 block of Oak Street. Val, if you would, please, I'll open the hearing and look to you.
Thank you. I've brought it up on the screen. This is an older aerial that you can kind of see where the Oak Street now goes. And this is kind of why we are here making that piece of property to the west of the new Oak Street one zoning category, because it's like 2/3 R3 right now with probably a third R1. And so that was kind of the first step in the process, now that the Housing Development Corp has bought this, is to make it all one zoning. And then they will bring in a plat of their final plat to what they want to do this with. So it's kind of a split down the middle, that it's half R3 and half R1, and they've now requested R2. The applicants are here if you have any questions for them.
Okay. Council, any questions for Val yet?
Just clarification, Val, this is a property that we sold off, I believe, to them here within the last 90 days or something like
Right.
that?
Yeah,
Looking
this
for a
was
housing
city-owned property, yeah.
situation.
Right, right. Anyone else that wants to come forward and speak? Dick Johnson.
I start stretching my legs.
Well, you know, you wouldn't have to open your mouth. You can stretch your legs without coming forward. I couldn't resist, Dick. You opened yourself up for that.
Okay, they're stretched. I'm representing the Norfolk Housing Development Corporation on this project, and it's the land that you're in the process of selling them just west of Oak Street, which was put in a couple years ago. The agreement with the city was that they would get it zoned R2 to, I guess, have a little bit of flexibility. Right now, I think the plan is for single-family detached on 5 lots. And I guess they would have the flexibility, if they wanted to do single-family attached, they could do that under the R2. I'll be appearing in the Planning Commission in the morning with a final plat of the 6-lot subdivision. We're also correcting a little problem down at the south end of the property. So it's no big
Okay.
deal.
All right. I'll hold you to that, Dick. Any questions for Dick as he stands before you?
Thank
Seeing
you.
none? Yep.
I'll be back.
All right. Anyone else that wants to speak to this or may have questions? All right, then let's see, how about a planning commission report?
The Norfolk Planning Commission held public hearings on June 21st, 2016 to consider the comprehensive plan amendment and the zoning change for the property located at 603 Oak Street through 800 block of Oak Street, and the Planning Commission recommends approval of the requests on 8-0 votes.
All right, and with that, I will close these hearings and ask for consideration of ordinance number 5407, amending the comp plan from single-family residential to medium-density residential on the property located from 603 Oak through the 800 block of Oak Street.
Your Honor, I would offer for consideration ordinance number 5407.
Second that, Your Honor.
All right, we have a motion with a second. If no further discussion, short title from you, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, amending the future land use map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5407 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5407 on second and third.
Second.
We have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 5407 on second and third. I would ask for your vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5407 carries on second and third.
And next would be consideration for ordinance number 5408, approving the zoning change from R1 Single Family and R3 to R2 on the property located from 603 Oak through the 800 block of Oak Street.
Your Honor, move consideration of ordinance number 5408 for approval.
Second.
We have a motion with a second for consideration of ordinance number 5408, a short title, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
And with that, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5408 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I would propose we suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 5408 on second and third.
Second.
We have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 5408 on second and third. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5408 carries on second and third.
All right, next is a public hearing to consider the feasibility of an amendment to the Norfolk Comprehensive Plan from single-family residential to rural residential on property at 3105 West Eisenhower Avenue, and as well, at the request, public hearing for Paul and Betsy Fielmeyer to consider a zoning change from ag to RR on property at 3105 West Eisenhower Avenue. I will open both hearings, and Val, your name is once again next to this.
It is.
Okay.
I've brought you up here where my hand is. This is the part that is being requested tonight to be RR. And you will see, actually tomorrow, Planning Commission will see a preliminary plat that shows this whole piece of property. But tonight, we're just in kind of the northern third of it, probably, for large 3-acre lots. And I know we've kind of had some discussion on large lots kind of on the north and west side of the town and growth. And this is kind of not too far away from city limits and public utilities. I believe Dennis would confirm that water and sewer is right about here currently.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And so that's what the request is, and I just wanted to bring up that we had had that discussion about large lots and what it could possibly do to growth and future assessments going across those large lots.
And this has been all part of the discussion, I would assume, with the applicants and such, so that they do understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was brought up at Planning Commission too. Mark discussed the assessments of what could, since they're not that far away, what the assessment could be. And the applicant was here at Planning Commission also and heard that discussion.
Okay. All right. Any questions at all for Val? This is a public hearing. Anyone that wants to come forward and speak? Mr. Johnson.
Yes, I'm representing the Fielmeyers, and basically what they want to do right now is put 3 residential lots, 3 3-acre residential lots along Eisenhower Avenue. The area to the south there, basically the south 2/3 of it, at some point in time, we're anticipating coming in with R1 zoning. Probably, we can't do it until Wyndham Hills gets developed and brings the utilities out to us. But right now, they want to go with the 3-acre lots.
Okay. Any questions for Dick, counsel?
So the applicant's aware of the discussion?
They were at the
as far
planning
as-
commission meeting. The discussion as far as what?
As possible future paving, or not paving, sewer and water extension assessments?
Well, when they do the R1 to the south of that, I would anticipate them putting sewer and water and paving in to develop the property. If you're, I don't know if you're familiar with this area or not, but a fairly good chunk of that south part is a pretty good-sized drainage way where I would expect at least the sewer to be run. And that actually continues on northwest off of this property. The drainage way does. I don't have a finger to point with, but.
Any other questions at all, council? Okay,
Okay.
appreciate it. Thanks,
Thank
Dick. Anyone else that wants to come forward and speak to this or may have questions regarding this? If not, then, Planning Commission report.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held public hearings on June 21st, 2016 to consider the comp plan amendment and the zoning change request for property located at 3105 West Eisenhower Avenue. The Planning Commission recommends approval on 7-1 votes.
Okay, and with that, I'm going to close these hearings and ask for consideration of ordinance number 5409, amending the city's comp plan from single-family residential to rural residential on the property located at 3105 West Eisenhower Avenue.
Your Honor, I'll move consideration of ordinance number 5409.
Second?
We have a motion with a second for consideration of 5409. We need a short title, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the future land use map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
And with that, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5409 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5409 on second and third.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to pass ordinance number 5409 on second and third, suspending the rules. If no further discussion, I would ask you to vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5409 carries on second and third.
And as well, consideration of ordinance number 5410, approving the zone change from ag to RR on the property located at 3105 West Eisenhower Avenue. Looking for consideration of?
Your Honor, I'll make consideration of ordinance number 5410.
Second, Your Honor.
All right, we have a motion with a second, and we need a short title, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Your Honor, before the vote, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Discussion. Val, can you give us an explanation of the distinction between R1 and RR zoning?
Rural residential, okay.
R1, minimum lot size is 7,000 square feet with a maximum lot size of 2 acres. And then RR only has a minimum lot size, I believe, of 1 acre per home site. But since they are not connected to water and sewer, septic has to be a minimum of 3 acres. So that's why they're asking for the 3-acre lot sizes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good question, Judge. All right, then are we ready to go forward and vote? Please do.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5410 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5410 on second and third.
Second.
All right, we have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 5410 on second and third. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5410 carries on second and third.
Okay. Next is a public, to consider the feasibility of an amendment to the Norfolk Comp Plan from single-family residential to mixed use on property located at 107 North Cottonwood Street or 210 East Brosh Avenue. And as well with that, we'll open the request of Husker Investment Group LLC to consider a zoning change from R3 multiple family residential to OD office district on property located at 107 North Cottonwood or 210 Brosh Avenue. I'm going to open the public hearings, and Val, one more time?
One more time.
One more time.
This property has been before Planning Commission. The request for OD allows a parking lot to be on a lot without a primary building, but it needs a conditional use permit. And so tomorrow, the Planning Commission will hear a conditional use permit if the zoning goes through tonight. They did hear a public hearing 2 weeks ago on the zoning, the comp plan, and the conditional use permit for this piece of property. And so, depending on how tonight goes, then we'll decide on the conditional use permit. But I believe you guys get the Planning Commission agenda. There was a draft in there of what was brought up at Planning Commission public hearing that we tried to address in the conditional use permit. But tonight, just before you is the comp plan and the rezoning, and that's kind of the reason why the request for OD is before you.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Anyone that wants to come forward and speak to this? Again, we are going to ask that you state your name and sign in for us.
Good evening, my name is Al Raji. Honorable Mayor, City Council members, I'm here this evening before you as a local businessman that is somewhat has his back against the wall. We are requesting this office district change zoning to allow us to add an overflow lot to our existing operation. About 7 years ago, we took up a mission to develop this area, originally purchasing the Capri Hotel, which was basically in really bad shape. The owners were not doing anything with the property, and they finally closed it, and that's when we bought the property. Subsequently bought the houses to the north of the property that were basically abandoned homes. There was one house that was being lived in, but it was in a very rough shape. Once I purchased those properties, we had a plan in place to possibly expand our Nissan store and expand that operation. I was approached by the Riverfront Development folks and was asked by those folks that they would like to see that area being developed into some sort of residential or some sort of office buildings and so forth like that. At that time, our plans were still in infancy stage, so I gave the folks at the Riverfront Development an option on the Capri Hotel, a 2-year option, which basically held the property for 2 years at no cost to them, and they could not come up with the funds to go forward with the purchase of that property. and do anything with the development in that area. At that point, we were asked by our manufacturer, Nissan Corporation, to make a decision whether we will expand at our current location and develop that into a renovated store, new store, and add additional display area, or move the operation out of the downtown area and move it out to an area where it allow us to grow. Being faced with owning the properties that were in that area, the investment that we had in that area already, we made a decision to go forward with spending about $1 million on developing the new store and the lot and the property that was there. Fortunately for us, and based on Nissan's projections and so forth, our business over the last year and a half since the renovation was completed has increased by about 230%. That increase has generated the need, the huge need for having additional inventory. The guideline for inventory size is 3 times the amount of your sales volume. If we were to keep that and have that kind of inventory on hand, with the current space that we have, we don't have enough parking space for it. So we were parking vehicles on that lot. It was grass. It's a grass lot. We haven't done anything with it. We basically tore the houses out and found out that that was not appropriate by the city staff. So I approached the city to find out what needed to be done. What can we do? And the original idea was that we apply for a commercial zoning to be able to pave the lot and park vehicles there. The first planning commission meeting that I attended, we had numerous neighbors showing concern about having additional commercial area, property in that area. There was numerous concerns, and I'm sure you will hear from the neighbors this evening. There was numerous concerns that were voiced, and at that time, Shane, our city administrator, suggested that we table that discussion and go back to the drawing table and figure out a way that would be beneficial to us and to the neighbors at the same time. So I met with the city staff. We looked at the minimum zoning that would be allowed to allow us to have this property paved. And the minimum zoning is an office district. With the office district zoning comes some requirements, and then we would have to apply for a special use permit. After that meeting, I was really, really positive that this zoning change and ultimately the conditional use permit would meet everybody's concern, the neighbors' concern, which I have been on the other side of this discussion, as you guys, some of you guys know. I respect the neighbors. I respect their privacy. I respect their homes where they have their homes. But I believe that this plan, this office district change would, and with the conditional use permit, which I will kind of read through. There's a draft of this that I was provided with that's coming out tomorrow, that the parking lot shall be used for new car overflow parking only. We're not going to be parking used vehicles on that lot. There is, we're not using that for storage of clunkers or cars that don't run. we're not planning on having any lights on that lot. There's no lighting permitted based on this conditional use permit. Applicant shall pave the lot. We had some discussion, maybe putting gravel in or doing the paving, and my preference, and I think the city's preference, would be to pave the lot, because once you put gravel down, every time you drive through there, you drag the gravel out on the street and subsequently cause problem. But the biggest thing that came out of that office district meeting more than anything else was that it would require, the conditional use permit would require that we have a 15-foot setback on the east side of the property and a 15-foot setback on the north side of the property. So if I can hand it out.
Thank you.
If the drawing that's in front of you kind of outlays the design of that office district parking area, where we would, on the east side, there would be shrubs that would grow to 4 feet tall. On the north side, there would be shrubs that would grow to 6 feet tall, and also requires us to plant some trees, about 7 trees in the parameter of that property. One of the other concerns that the neighbors had was the additional traffic that this would create. And to my belief, since this lot would have one entrance and one exit, as you can see on the plan, we lined up that entrance and exit with the driveway that's across the street. So at any time, if there are any cars that are coming out of that lot, even if it's night that have lights on, there wouldn't be lights shining anybody's windows. But more than that, we are going to be utilizing that as a storage lot, which means that at any time when we are not using that driveway would be closed. It's not a driveway that would be opened up to the general public. It's not a lot that the general public is going to be allowed to drive in. The reason we're doing that is one, to address the concern of the neighbors, and the other is because of cutting down the size of the lot, now we will not, the cars will be parked so close that we will not want people driving through the lot and damaging vehicles. So we will have that entrance blocked off with a vehicle, or possibly a gate if that's required to allow that to happen. Like I said, the conditional use permit dictates everything that I just told you. And I think as you folks will, first of all, I want to let you guys know that I wouldn't want your job. But as you guys will hear tonight from the neighbors, the concerns that they have, this conditional use permit will address. And I would be more than happy to sit with the folks from the neighborhood. I have tried to reach out to them. Unfortunately, it has not happened. And I think when we had our meeting, I think at the city, I don't know if whether they were invited to that meeting or not.
So. They were not.
They were,
Just-
okay.
They were not. Just for your conditional use.
Okay. But I think, like I said, I think those items would be addressed in this conditional use permit. About 7, 8 years ago, I was in front of you guys opposing a zoning change that was happening behind the property that I own, the old Mary's gas station, where Speedway Auto Parts wanted to expand their lot to park additional vehicles. And as you know, we butted heads, and finally we came together. the conditional use permit was given to those folks, and about after 4 years, the business changed, where they didn't need that additional space. They didn't need that additional lot. And now that lot is reverted back into the zoning that it was before. So I guess the reason I'm bringing that up is because if our Nissan store, we have made an investment here and now, and there's a timeline where we have to expense that investment. If our Nissan store continues to grow at this pace that it's growing, we will ultimately might have to move from our current location. So this conditional use permit, I think, is granted for 10 years, Val?
That was in the draft.
And so if that needs changes and things change, that property can revert back to whatever use that that needs to be happen. I'm just asking that you guys be open-minded and understand that I wouldn't be in front of you asking for this as a business guy if our business was not dictating it. It's not every day that business guy wakes up and says, let's spend thousands of dollars more and expand our business. We have become a force with the economy, and as far as our Nissan brand, we are the only Nissan dealer from here all the way west. If you go as far as west as you can, there's not another Nissan dealer from here there. So we're bringing people from Grand Island, we're bringing people here from Hastings, we're bringing people here from Kearney, we're bringing people here to Norfolk since we have done our expansion and since we have done the renovation. We're bringing a lot of people to town to look at our products and buy our products. And when these people come to town, they not only spend money at our facility, they spend money at other places. So I ask for your consideration. I will be happy to answer any questions you might have. And again, I want to say that I understand everything every concern that the neighbors have. I am not belittling their concerns. I'm not arguing with them over this. I'm just saying that there is a middle ground, and I think this conditional use permit is a middle ground.
Al, I know you told us, on the north side, though, that is shrubs, right?
Correct, shrubs and trees, yeah. And
Is that suitable with the neighbors? I mean, was there any request for maybe fencing rather than?
And I'm open to that. The shrubs were suggested by the city.
Okay,
If fencing is, if they would feel more comfortable with fencing, the trail will be on
Right.
the north side of that property. So ultimately, whether they would want the people that are walking down the trail to look at a fence or look at some shrubs, that would be decided as far as what, and I'm open to that. I'm 100% open to that.
Okay.
You know, and the other thing, I was talking to one of the council members last week, and, you know, the commercial zoning that we have right now, the lots that we have next to it really would not be an ideal zoning for a residential. You wouldn't want to live right next to a car lot. So this office district would allow us to have a buffer. So eventually, if there are future developments north of that property, it would be a great marriage. It would be a transitional transfer from commercial to OD with some buffering to residential.
okay. Any questions, council, for Al as he stands here before you?
Al, if this were approved and say it takes its normal time running on through, your anticipated schedule on creating this space this year or next year?
We actually, and that's the other, so I was telling you that we had cars parked on the property and the neighbors were not happy. As a matter of fact, they called the city and filed a complaint, which they approached me and we moved all the vehicles from the lot. those vehicles right now are located on my Mary's property over there.
Why isn't
in-
that an option for
Pardon?
the overflow then? If
Pardon?
those cars are parked elsewhere right now, why is that not
Right
an
now, I'm in violation of my franchise agreement with Nissan by having those vehicles parked away from that property. Nissan, and I approached Nissan about this issue, and they, basically, when they send you a letter back, they dictate to you what is in your franchise agreement. And what is in your franchise agreement is that if you have new vehicles, you can have used vehicles anywhere you want. But if you have any new vehicles away from the area that was assigned in your dealership agreement, you're in violation of your franchise agreement. And the penalties for that violation, every violation has a certain penalty. The penalties for that violation is termination of your franchise agreement. So really, I mean, I was either in violation with the city or I'm in violation of my franchise agreement. So that's why I told you guys I got my backs against the wall. So to answer your question, we would want to move forward with that as soon as we can, possible.
The planning portion of it or the screening portion of it,
We will plan we would include that in the whole project. It would, when we do the project, there will be the shrubs and everything planted at the same time.
Any other questions for Al? Okay,
Thank you. Thank
appreciate
you.
it. You bet. This is a public hearing, and if you'll come forward and sign in for us. State your name.
Good evening. My name is Jan With, and I live across from the property that Mr. Raji wants to develop. First of all, I don't know if you're aware of the letters that were sent to the Planning Commission of people that were voting against this or not, and of putting any concrete down there. At 11:45 at night, finally the lights went out in the parking lot that he currently has. He says he's not going to put any lights there. Well, he said a lot of things, but you know, he was in violation for over a year parking his cars on that lot. Unbeknownst to me and stupid of me to know that you had to file a complaint with the city to get somebody to adhere to a law. But it was presumptuous of him to even think prior to our planning commission meetings that he could just park cars there more. Even after Shane had asked him not to park anymore there, he continued to park them. That's why we as residents in that area went and filed the complaint with the city. So I'm not sure that I believe what he tells me. Also, once you pour concrete down, you're pretty well committed. Think about it. How would you, Mayor, Beth, Val, and you gentlemen, your significant other, your wife, your partner, whatever, how would you like to have lights shine in your house at night that you don't even have to turn the lights on in your dining room to be able to see? Because the lights from his parking lot shine into your house. I had to relocate my bedroom in my house even after putting darkening shades up because they still came through. I don't think any of you would tolerate that. We have semis that come down that street. It's a narrow street. There's narrower ones in the city, but there's a lot of traffic because we have a school at the end of Cottonwood. We have semis that come down that street. They've parked across the street in front of this property, unloaded, or they've parked a little bit to the south but still, it's a residential area. Let's keep it a residential area. We do not have enough residential housing in Norfolk for new companies coming in to bring their people in and to work here. What are you going to do? We don't have it. Do we want people to go somewhere else? No. We, the residents, pay taxes just like everybody else. We have people that come in, family that come in from out of town. They buy groceries here. They buy clothes here. They spend money in Norfolk, just like he has people that come in. But let's think about this. How would you feel if you lived in a residential area, and I've lived there a big share of my life? How would you like to have a commercial lot put in across the street from you? Think about it. We're wanting to develop that as a riverfront area. Do you want people walking along a trail? They might have a pop bottle, they might have something else, fling it up over the bank, hit one of his cars. I wouldn't want it as a business person. But a riverfront area, if we really think about it, and if it's what you all want, what we as a city want, beautification of this city, parking lot's not gonna, with cars in it, isn't gonna do it. It's gonna take away from that beautification. It's not gonna be like we want it to be, because we're gonna have a car lot. We're gonna have more concrete than we do green space in this town if we continue to do this. It's a residential area. Leave it a residential area. Don't encroach commercial or OD areas into residential areas. People don't want that. I gave a petition to the Planning Commission that had signatures on it of people in the area that did not want this to go through. And I hope that you as City Council will abide with what the Planning Commission voted for, and that was not to allow this.
Can I ask you a question, Jan? You're still going to have lights.
Oh, I know I'm going to have lights.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we all understand.
I
He
still
has-
am going to have lights.
Okay.
I know
okay,
that. But
Okay.
you know, Mayor, I had to put up a fence on the south side of my yard to keep them from pushing snow in my yard. You know?
Okay.
So-
Us as the city, are you saying? Or
No.
because,
Because Cornhusker, I mean, we have pictures of them. I have pictures of them. One of the other neighbors have pictures of them pushing the snow across Cottonwood Street over into the river or on the bank. You know, let's think about it. It's a hazard. If you've ever been, even with the lot that he has now, if you've ever been down Cottonwood Street to get onto Norfolk Avenue in the wintertime, there's a big snowdrift there because they pile their snow there because they have no other place to go. Or they choose to pile it there because of the cars are all there. But think about what we're doing. We're taking a residential area and putting it, forcing it down the residence area of changing it from residential to commercial or residential to office district. Leave it the way it is. Thank you.
thanks, Jan. Anyone else that wants to come forward and speak to this?
I'm Diane Zane, and I live at 110 North Cottonwood, across from the empty lot. I was the one that filed the formal complaint. The first meeting we had here, I agreed to be reasonable. Mr. Raji agreed to park no more cars there. He didn't have to move them, but no more there until we met again. Less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
Less than 24 hours out of walking out of this door, there was one parked across the street. Later that week, they moved cars around for about 2 days. When the dust settled, there were 2 lots, 2 rows on that lot where we had agreed, well, none were supposed to be there. And we had agreed that there would be no more parked there. There were. If he thinks he's not selling cars, or if anybody thinks he's not going to sell cars off that lot, that's crazy, that's absurd. People now, when they were there, would pull up, park, get out, and go look. I mean, a fence might be the only thing to keep them from going in there because you wouldn't see them. There's a lot of traffic. They pull into the driveways to turn around and look at the cars. They would flip around in the middle of the street to look at the cars. It's a residential area. I bought my home because I liked being close to downtown. I didn't want to be downtown. I just liked the conveniences. I understand Mr. Raji's problem, but right now, if he's growing as fast as he says he is, he's going to face the same thing. But me personally, I have a hard time believing what he's agreeing to here because of what his actions. I also don't understand why, okay, he knows where I live. There's not been a knock on my door. He has not tried to approach me. I know he probably doesn't know where I work or my phone number, but he knows where I live. I also wasn't invited to any commission or any meeting to try and make things better. I don't understand that either. I mean, I don't understand a lot of things, but it's my home that I'm fighting for. It's a safe place for my kids to come and visit, my grandkids to come and play. I had my grandson there today. I took the day off work so I could be here. We played Frisbee in the yard. It was nice, it was quiet. Some of the other kids came up, they played with us. I don't want to lose the family neighborhood. And please, consider it, just consider if you were in our position, what would you want?
Ma'am,
Yeah, go ahead and sign into while you're doing that. Go ahead.
if there were another paved car lot across the street from your house, do you feel that that increases or decreases the property value of your home?
It would probably decrease it. But it also, with all the increased traffic, I saw the traffic, and I saw the semis coming down the street and unloading. And I don't care if there's lights or no lights. I don't want the increased traffic. And like I said, after walking out of here and trying to be reasonable, and it just slapped me in the face, I'm a non-believer in what's being said up here by Mr. Raji. And I'm sorry, but that's 100% honest.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question if I could too.
Yes,
Right,
ma'am.
right now it's zoned R3. Okay, and you understand what that could mean in that piece of property there as far as additional duplexes, complex, whatever?
Yep.
Does that increase in traffic concern you that way?
No, because there are going to be people that are living there, and they're going to have the same concerns that I have. I would rather see families there and bring some more kids in. I want to keep the small town, it's like a small town. In that little neighborhood, we have neighborhood barbecues, we look out for everybody's kids. We, as neighbors, know our neighbors. We've walked over, we introduce ourselves when somebody moves in. I don't want to lose that. I would, housing, apartments, I'd take that in a heartbeat.
I think I heard you say during the planning commission meeting that you originally moved to the area because it felt like a neighborhood, because it was a residential neighborhood. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I have a question of the, because you said you didn't get the notice.
Well, there was one thing I didn't understand. Did you guys have a meeting without the neighbor?
I have a question about that too. Why was there a conditional use permit meeting prior to the city council's decision on the zoning change request on this?
We had, after the planning commission meeting, there's testimony that was had, and that's when we requested the planning commission to table it, which they did. They tabled it. We gathered through that testimony, gathered the concerns being the lighting was really a concern that we heard from the neighbors. We talked about traffic as far as, with Mr. Raji, as far as the truck traffic and unloading of the cars there, and that's something that could be, I'm not sure if it's in the draft conditional use permit or not, but I'd imagine that could be added to if that was something that was suggested by the neighborhood. And we talked about greenscape and landscaping. So staff reached out to Mr. Raji because he was the applicant, and we had that discussion, and then we proceeded on as we did. Also in OD, R3 is allowed in OD as well. So going forward, if the business plan would change, if this was approved tonight, then that concrete could be ripped out, and there would be no zoning change required to put R3 back into that, because R3 is allowed in the office district zoning category as well. So that was the compromise that was trying to be struck.
Okay, and I'm sorry, but
Were there notices sent to neighbors about this meeting on the conditional use permit?
No, it was just with the applicant, trying to fashion a compromise with what we heard in testimony from the planning commission testimony, what we heard from this young lady and from Ms. With, and we just went with that.
I'm sorry, but there was more said than just truck traffic.
If there's more,
There was more said about the traffic than just truck traffic. And I know Mr. Raji said, well, I'm not aware of it. Well, no, he's not. He doesn't live there. The traffic when the cars were parked over there, it was nuts. There was a lot of traffic over there. They were shopping the cars. I mean, they didn't pull into the lot, no. They whipped around in our driveways and in the middle of the street and parked there. We'd get out and look. And that's the traffic part of it I'm talking about, not just the semis.
and the council could keep in mind that that conditional use permit is in draft form and can be added to if there's other requirements that the planning commission and/or the council think are necessary for a conditional use permit, those things could be added.
Okay, I have another thing. Why were we not important enough to be at that meeting? Those are our homes. If it was your home, would you want to be there?
Again, because I thought I captured what the testimony was at the planning commission, and then we sat down with Mr. Raji, who was the applicant, and we tried to fashion the conditional use permit to address those concerns. But keep in mind, the conditional use permit is in draft form. The planning commission will hear it tomorrow. If this is approved, the planning commission could hear it tomorrow. They could add to those conditions if they chose to, or delete from them. And then if that wasn't satisfactory, it could be appealed to the to the full council, and the council could do the same.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say this. I feel this is kind of shady behind our backs. He says he represented us. How can he represent us without us being there at the same table where they were coming up with this?
Okay,
I guess I do
one
have
at a
a
time.
question about the timeline of this. I'm curious as to why the conditional use permit meeting took place after the planning commission voted to deny the zone request. Without the zone request, there is no conditional use permit, correct?
That's not correct. That's not when it took place. It took place after the planning commission tabled their action. And they tabled specifically so the elected, or excuse me, for the staff to go and do what we did. So there was two planning commission.
When was the last conditional use permit meeting?
That was the only meeting that we had, and that was after the first planning commission meeting, when the planning commission tabled the action. And that's why we did it.
I'm confused, but I don't know what meeting, Shane, you're talking about where you had some discussion with Mr. Raji, but.
Hang on, Ralph. Hang tight.
The conditional, the hearing on the conditional use permit, that was on the planning commission, the same time that the zoning and the comprehensive plan recommendations were generated by the planning commission, is that correct?
Yes, 2 weeks ago, Planning Commission heard all 3 public hearings of comp plan, rezone, and conditional use for this piece of property.
And those folks, I don't know where you did, I was doing a couple of things here. You said you lived across the street?
Yes, at 110 North Cotton.
So what happens is that when the zoning application or the comprehensive plan application or the conditional use application comes, is there's a picture drawn that is made that shows those people that are within 300 feet, okay? So in addition to, you maybe saw a sign on the property, you maybe didn't see a sign on the property, but that's one way that notice is given. A second way that notice is given is that everybody that's within 300 feet gets a notice mailed to them, first-class mail, that says this is going on at the Planning Commission. And that information comes from basically where the taxes are sent and what the record says. So you should have received that information. You're shaking your head.
I got that.
So, I mean, I think that's the meeting that's there.
Those are notices of the hearings, though, not the
Those,
conditional use
that's what I
permit.
got. I didn't get
Correct.
the private
Well, but
meeting.
the hearing, what routinely happens is that, and somewhere along the way, this question was posited to me. I mean, the provisions that are had, all of those things are noticed at the same time. And on the day 2 weeks ago at the Planning Commission voted 5-3? 5-3 to recommend not approving the requested zoning change. So the conditional use permit public hearing was already scheduled. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the council, and so what has happened for years in the city of Norfolk is when those kinds of things accompany themselves, they all get done. And one of them, when the question was asked, we looked at that was last done that way, had to do with Helena Chemical. That had the same kind of situation where you had a zoning request last fall and you had the conditional use permit, and not everybody was for that. And all of that has its way to work out. It has the benefit of people that are interested in it coming and getting to talk at one planning commission meeting to the comp plan change, the zoning change, the conditional use permit. As Shane says, it can't be issued, the conditional use permit can't be issued unless the zoning happens. It could be on the agenda tomorrow, but it can't be acted on if that's the case. And that's, that's just the way that it's always been done. And we could do it differently if we wanted to slow down that process to allow all of that. So that's kind of the history of that, and what we could go forward after this with whatever direction the council wants to make about slowing that down so that there couldn't be a conditional use permit requested and even applied for until the zoning was in place.
When the OD was suggested, in the Planning Commission meeting and they tabled it, that was my direction to go ahead and see if that was suitable for the applicant, Mr. Raji, if OD would even work for him, and then if there was anything that could pan out for him as far as OD and then putting a conditional use permit on top of that. I could have had the right just to say, no, I want to go forward with the commercial zoning as was heard by the Planning Commission and let the council hear that. Instead of OD tonight, you'd be here and see what the commercial zoning request. In fact, you'd have heard it long ago. So, that's how that happened. I mean, it's natural. This is what city staff does every day, for the most part.
Okay, it might be what you do every day, but there's been a lot of opposition to this, and to meet and do things behind our back, I still say
But that's why we're here tonight.
We didn't do
We
anything
are, but
behind
there
your
was a
back.
meeting there that y'all.
We had
talked
one meeting
about.
with Val and I and Mr. Raji and the city engineer, Mark Dolacek, to talk about the OD and the conditional use permit, if that would work for him. And maybe there's compromise there, was suggested perhaps. But nothing's behind anyone's back. This is all in front of you tonight to decide, and it was in
Well,
front of the Planning Commission as well.
I'm glad it's out in the open now, but I still feel, I would have liked to have been there. There were additional concerns that I would have liked.
Please share 'em. I mean-
I don't, if, I'd like to see it more of a green space, I'd like to see housing. But the green that he's got to put, how many years is it going to take to block that?
Would you like the
make it look-
fencing? I mean, these are the things that we'd like to hear.
If I would rather see a nice vinyl fencing, something set back with greenery in front of it, so nobody knew what was behind there.
Again-
if it had to be cars. But I mean, I would rather see housing. We need
Yeah,
housing.
that's not necessarily the discussion.
That's
We're not-
fine.
We're not necessarily here to,
Thank you.
to discuss what has to be in a conditional
I
use
would
permit.
rather see-
We're here to decide whether the zoning makes sense on this
Thank
at
you.
all. So,
And I
That's
guess
fine.
that's, I don't know. Just put yourself in our shoes. That's all I'm asking, you know? We bought our homes for a reason, and I think
Please understand, we understand that. This is not easy because this gentleman has a business he's built up too, and he is,
he does, and right now, he's pretty landlocked, but he's only gonna
Exactly.
make it landlocked worse. Why, I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. I understand, and so does this group of elected officials here, and it makes it very tough when we try to come to these kind of decisions because certainly our responsibility is to look for the future of this community wide.
And that's
So-
very true. I'm originally from Cozad, and I know that when I grew up, town was booming. I know that a lot of businesses applied. They wanted to build in Cozad. Cozad wouldn't let them because they didn't want any competition. Those businesses went to Lexington. They went to Gothenburg. Cozad's dying. I don't want to see that here. But I also don't want to see all our housing taken. I don't want to see our residential areas overrun when there's a lot of other places they could go to.
Well, and again, respectfully so, the problem is we're looking at a situation where one end of it is
I know.
commercial and the other side is a residential. So it's a tough call that has to be made, and we appreciate your coming forward and speaking with us.
And
We
thank you
do.
for your time.
Okay. Anyone else that wants to come forward and speak?
Mayor and Councilman, I just need to make a clarification. Josh, Mr. Moaning, I know there was a concern. There was no meeting between me and the city of Norfolk about conditional use permit. After the zoning change, commercial zoning change was tabled at the Planning Commission, I was asked to meet with the city staff to see if an OD zoning change and a conditional use permit would be something that I would apply for rather than commercial zoning. It wasn't a meeting that we sat around the table and talked about the conditional the permit and the conditional use permit. The first time that I've seen anything on this conditional use permit was the draft that I got from the city that was going to be in the meeting tomorrow. So there was no meeting behind closed doors with Shane or with Val or with anybody from the city talking about conditional use permits. It was just the zoning change when we had to make a decision whether we were going to move from the commercial to the office district. Because their concern was if they did that and we had to use the setback of 15 feet on each side of the property, that would cut back on the amount of land we needed. So that was the concern. I apologize if I said we had a meeting about conditional use permit. So
I appreciate that, Al. Again, I just, I was a little curious about the chronology of this and why it was necessary to have a conditional use permit draft written up prior to this meeting where we decide whether a conditional use permit is needed or not.
Yeah, and
That was my question.
yeah, yep. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. And you're on first. Speak your name for us, if you will, and sign in.
Is Trisha Brandel. I live at 108 North Cottonwood Street.
Okay.
I don't really have a whole lot to say. I bought my house 3.5 years ago, and I would like to agree with Diane that it is very neighborly. It's very welcoming. They all walked over and introduced themselves. So that's just what I would like to see is more residential area instead of commercial area. So that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you for coming forward.
My name is Scott Stange. My wife Teresa and I, we live at 213 North Cottonwood, which is 1 block north of the proposed location that he wants to do this. I empathize with Mr. Raji's situation. However, from our aspect, my aspect of the area, the character of the business, and that reflects on Mr. Raji, can we trust that he does the right thing? That's what it comes down to for us. I can give you examples of, in the winter, I've seen snow piled on the terrace where you can't see cars coming from the east. When you're at Norfolk Avenue on Cottonwood Street, trying to turn right or left, you can't see cars coming from the east because of the snow pile there. He's had cars parked on the terrace when they're on specials or whatever, trying to promote them. You can't see beyond those vehicles when you're in a car to see if anybody's coming. You're talking, I don't know how many feet it is exactly, but it does definitely restrict your vision. So it's a safety issue there. He's had signs, the big plaque, or cable, what do I want to say, the tarp type signs, I apologize, that have been staked out there on the terrace that have blocked the vision. The last year or so, after the houses were torn down, it's been a real issue, and I don't know how many times the city has been called about the grass and the weeds on this property that we're talking about. He doesn't keep it up now, so that brings into my concern, what is he going to do with them shrubs? Are they going to get out of control and look like crap, 10 years from now? My house is 100 years old this year. Very proud of that house. Dick knows what my house looks like. He drives by all the time. I love the neighborhood. I have been in that neighborhood my entire life. Within a block of where I live now, I've been there for 57 years. So I like it, and I don't want to see it, I mean, I would love to have him as a neighbor, but I want him to treat us like a neighbor, not like I'm a business, you're a neighbor. That's
Fair.
all I have to say.
That's fair. Fair statement. Anyone else that wants to come forward and speak? Okay. Discussion here, council? Oh, well,
I do have a question for Al. Al, you'd mentioned that in your franchise agreement, please, yeah. So the ground that you have over by the old Mary's property is not in your franchise agreement?
Correct.
Have you contacted those folks to see if that ground can be
Yeah, and
added
that's
to
what
your
I-
franchise agreement?
That's what I was reading to you, a paragraph. Unfortunately, it's internal documents from Nissan. I can't share it with you. I wanted to make copies, but they don't allow that. But that was one of the things that I had reached out to Nissan, asking them if we could have a supplement, what they call a supplemental lot. And their response is that the franchise agreement is written with the location that the dealerships to be located, and the new vehicles have to be presented in that area.
In a contiguous area with your showroom?
Correct.
I see.
Do you have used cars on that lot, on the Nissan lot at all right now?
No, we do not park any the used vehicles are all parked on the showroom side or the east side of the display area. The new lot that was added is 100% new vehicle display.
I would like to just say, if I do vote for this tonight, I would like to make sure that in the agreement that all of these issues are addressed. The no lights, maybe where he can push the snow so he doesn't block view, signage accordance to the size of the lot so that we're all legal. But a lot of these issues I would like to see added into there so that they are represented when they do go to the planning commission.
I guess I would just say before we get too far down that road, because again, we're not deciding on a conditional use permit right up front. We're deciding on whether the zoning request change is appropriate here. And, just my thoughts, and I appreciate all the bit that Al has brought and brings to Norfolk. And it's always hard to tell someone what they can and can't do with their own property. On the other hand, we have zoning codes on the books for a reason. And this is a residential lot right next door and across the street from other houses. And I think, as we've heard from the neighbors tonight, they expect from the city, have a reasonable expectation from the city that there be maintained some kind of barrier from commercial encroachment. And so at the heart of this issue, regardless of what discussion has taken place or what drafts have been put together for a conditional use permit, that is pretty preliminary in my mind already. The zoning principles behind this request are flawed, I believe, primarily because you have residents there. I mean, I've thought about this a little bit. I own property on Norfolk Avenue, the other side of town. My family has a cattle business. We raise beef. We've always talked about, potentially starting a butcher shop in Norfolk. Norfolk Avenue is a highly trafficked area. If I tried to change my residential property to a butcher shop, there would be some objections in the neighborhood, and I would expect there to be. And I don't think it would be a commercial encroachment upon my neighbors that I don't think would be appropriate, and that's my stance on this issue here. All that said, again, appreciate the difficult decisions you have here as a businessman here, Al, but I don't think this property fits for commercial. It has a long-standing history and precedence as residential property.
Okay, yes, right now, we're still in the public hearing portion on both of these. And so the thing to keep in mind is that we're looking at two issues in the public hearing portion right now. One is a comprehensive plan change, has absolutely nothing to do with whether there's going to be CUP or anything else allowed on it. And the other thing is a zoning change, which again, has absolutely nothing to do with whether the cup comes up or not that way. So I think that's two important things that we need to keep in mind. And then I've got a few other things I will interject when we go into each issue that way. So
I think it's important to note too that a cup is not possible though if the zoning change is not made, correct?
Correct, but we're not discussing a cup. And that's not the part of the public hearing, it is not a cup. So.
Mr. Moaning, I respectfully with your concern, I think that the thing to keep in mind that the zoning the change that I'm asking here, I do not believe it's going to be a permanent change in that area. Like I said, as the growth of the store is dictating, within probably 7 to 8 years, that is going to require us to seek a different location. And with that said, we have a huge investment in that area right now, that without being able to do this, we are going to be in huge trouble. And I know, like I said, I know there's a lot of concern, but I think the conditional use permit, and I know that's not on the table, will address all of those concerns. And it's not going to be a permanent deal. If it's changed to an office, I own that property, And if I leave that property sit for 8 years without doing anything to it, it's not doing the city of Norfolk any good either.
Sorry. Anyone else that wants to speak to this? I think we're still in, yeah, we're still in an open public hearing. So anybody else that wants to come forward and speak to this or may have questions of, or seeing none? Okay, then are we ready to go forward with a planning commission report, Beth, on?
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on June 21st, 2016 to consider amending the City of Norfolk's comp plan from single-family residential and mixed use on the property located at 107 North Cottonwood Street or 210 East Brosh. Husker Investment Group applied for the rezone of the property, which requires amendment to the comp plan. The Planning Commission denied the motion to recommend approval of the amendment with a 3-5 vote. And then I've got the other one here.
Technology, isn't it great?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on Tuesday, June 21st, 2016, at the request of Husker Investment Group to consider a zone change from R3 Multiple Family Residential to OD Office District on property located at 107 North Cottonwood Street or 210 East Brosh. The Planning Commission denied the motion to recommend approval of the request with a 3-5 vote.
Okay, and with that, I'm going to go forward and close the hearing and ask for consideration of ordinance number 5411, amending the city's comprehensive plan from single-family residential to mixed use on property located at 107 North Cottonwood or 210 East Brosh Avenue. Please vote.
Whoa,
Wait a minute.
you
Oh, I'm
gotta
sorry.
Introduce first.
Yep,
Yeah,
I'm,
I would introduce ordinance 5411, I believe,
yep, you're right, Jim.
first
Yep.
hearing.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion with a second, and now we have a short title from Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the future land use map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
And now, if you
Okay,
would.
as promised, I have a couple questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right.
Thank you.
Forgot all about that, Jim, I'm sorry,
Hanging
go
me up
forward.
there, so.
Yeah,
A couple questions for you, Val. On the mixed-use designation on the comprehensive plan, what does that allow in there? And I'm sorry, I should have probably forewarned you on that.
That's okay. It came up at planning.
I tried,
commission.
Val, I tried hard.
You really did.
Trying to get around me.
Let me pull up kind of the description of what mixed use says as kind of the use characteristics. Mixed use incorporates a mix of residential, office, and limited commercial uses. That's the use characteristics from our
Okay.
current comp plan.
And I thought that was accurate. It's been a couple weeks, actually, since I looked at that document that way. And so that's, that's, when I look at that, I see, okay, it's talking about single-family and mixed use as its current comprehensive plan designation. I think and again, we're just talking about the comprehensive plan at this point in time. We aren't talking further about, whether it's going to be display space or not. So I would pose that the office developments or offices and/or related developments is directly addressed by the statement of what a mixed use is that way. So it's not a reach for OD to be an approved item, or for OD comprehensive plan being an approved change. And actually, I would contend that they are probably one and the same that way, because OD also allows for single-family development, as mixed use said, or, not, excuse me, R3 development.
OD allows multifamily.
Okay.
not necessarily the whole R3 category,
multifamily, so which is duplexes or anything higher than that. So, again, my contention is that it's not a reach that we aren't actually saying potato when we're looking at what the comprehensive plan describes this as. And again, I'm addressing strictly the comprehensive plan end of it, so.
Would we be considering transitioning this property from residential to OD had this issue not been raised?
Are you addressing that to me, Councilman?
No, I'm throwing it out there.
Okay,
Anybody has an opinion?
I would pose that in a shorter time frame rather than a long time frame that we would be. I would also pose that as the riverfront development comes along through there, one of the key things that I heard anyway in the discussions of the riverfront people was that, we were looking for smaller businesses along with multifamily or larger R3 things occurring in that area in a mixed use. So I would say yes, if the riverfront thing were moving along at a faster pace. That's the only way that those kinds of things occur in that area. So short of that, Mr. Raji is proposing it at this point in time, I believe that as the economy or that project moved on along, that we would see that in a shorter time period than rather a long time period. I think that this area is an area of transition. Granted, people buy houses in areas all the time, and with the proposed long-range plans of traffic going easterly out of town, I suspect that this area is going to be an area of a much greater transition, that is going to reach in there, and I'm not talking in 1 or 2 years, that it's 5-10 years down the road that it's going to creep back to a given point there, but it's an area in transition.
Transition to higher density.
To higher density and/or probably some mixed use and some commercial stuff and along that line, so. And that's, I don't have a crystal ball, but if I did, that's what I see developing out in that area, so.
Part of the concerns brought up at the Planning Commission meeting from the riverfront people were that initially the hope for residential development along that area would come to fruition. It's, as you said, it takes a long time for these things to develop. It's my personal opinion on this yet that the residential designation still is appropriate for this particular property. I'm not arguing that OD, doesn't necessarily fit within the comprehensive plan. But, we have to acknowledge what's in front of us as well. We can be theoretical about this, but there's a reason we're talking about this right now.
Right. But again, my main point is that it's already, in my opinion, has the designation there with the mixed-use comprehensive plan designation on it. And we don't want to go into the discussions that I have off and on regarding the development of the comprehensive plan back in 2006 and 7 and the clarity that it left the city with, so.
Any other discussion here among?
Well, the housing study that we had indicated that eventually that's what they want. They want this corridor to be turned into R3 type housing or R2. But you made a statement, it limited R3. What did that mean? Limited R3 and OD. Val? What is it, when you said there's limited R3 and OD. What's that mean?
If you just have a straight R3 zoning, you can have anywhere from single-family to multifamily and everything in between. So this OD allows multifamily, so you couldn't have single-family.
But duplexes,
Yeah,
apartment
anything,
complexes.
yeah, so anything multifamily that would be part of that R3.
I remember when the Capri Hotel was there and Leon Laver
Yeah.
was working really hard to turn that into an office. And then I don't know what he was gonna do with those houses that sat there for a long time. I think there was talk of apartment, whatnot in there. I mean, that Capri Hotel being gone looks a lot better than it being there.
Absolutely.
So I mean, there has to be some credit given to somebody who goes out and buys a property and tears it down.
Right. Makes an investment. Other comments? Jim, are you done?
Call question?
If you're done, okay,
Yes, ma'am.
let's vote.
No, no.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got this guy next to me that says, not yet.
Okay, let me make sure I get this right, please. Which agenda item is this? I'm flopping back and forth here.
Comprehensive plan.
Comprehensive plan. Okay. Before you vote, we need to talk about the state statute, and you'll recall that earlier on here, one of the parties that came up.
Ms. Zane,
And,
I believe.
what was that?
Yes, Ms. Zane.
Somebody came up and spoke about petitions and whatever, and you saw me running about here. A couple of things that I did in that time frame. I went down and got from Val that list that we talked about, which is the property list that indicates those folks that own properties within 300 feet of the subject property. The list that's in that file has 21, as I counted them, of those properties in there that received that notice we talked about, and so on and so forth. Two of those property owners are public entities. One's the city of Norfolk, one is Madison County. That relates to some of the things on the flood control. So there's 19 of them. So I went down that list of owners that had signed those, and I stopped when I got 5 of the folks that had signed that petition being on the property list. That's an important number because 5 divided by 19 is 26%, and this is what 19905 of the Nebraska statute says. Regulations, restrictions, and boundaries authorized to be created pursuant to section 901 to 19915 may from time to time be amended, supplemented, changed, modified, or repealed in the case, or repealed. Now, the other thing that we need to note is that in 1901 to 1915, that obviously, even an attorney can figure out that that includes 19-903. 19-903 talks about the comprehensive plan, and it says that the comprehensive plan designates proposed general descriptions, general locations, and categories of public and private use of land. It's that designation on the comprehensive plan that is before the council with this ordinance. So, we're changing the comprehensive plan. We're changing it with more than 20% of the folks that are within 300 feet protesting that. So the statute then goes on to say, in case of a protest against such change signed by the owners of 20% or more, either of the area of the lots included in the change, or of those immediately adjacent on the sides or the rear thereof extending 300 feet therefrom, and of those directly opposite extending 300 feet from the street frontage of such lots, the change is not in accordance with the comprehensive development plan. Obviously, you're changing the development plan, so it's not in accordance with that. It then goes on and says, the amendment shall not be effective except by the favorable vote of 3/4 of all the members of the legislative body of the municipality. So the easy thing for me to say is, you need 6 votes to pass ordinance, whatever the ordinance number is, 5411?
Yes, sir.
On first reading. And happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Did you get that all?
That's a
Yeah.
good catch.
Yeah,
Good catch.
yeah.
Val, can you read the definition of office development again from the comprehensive plan?
The land use category mixed use
Mixed use, yeah.
The use characteristics incorporates a mix of residential, office, and limited commercial uses.
Limited commercial, okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns before we call the question? 1, 2, 3, vote. Oh, short title, I'm sorry, I figured Clint's long, yes.
fault. That's my fault.
Clint's long title, kind of.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the future land use map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
And again, this was before the planning commission. This is one of the ordinances before the planning commission that was recommended no, correct?
Well, this
So-
ordinance wasn't, but.
Or not this ordinance, this proposal.
So, I'm sorry. So, okay. Now are we ready to vote? Please. Okay.
Voting in favor of the ordinance 5411, council members Granquist, Langy, Merrill, Clausen, Faust, File. Voting against the ordinance, Councilman Merrill, or Moaning, excuse me. Ordinance 5411 carries on first reading.
All right. With that, we have, let's see, we are looking at ordinance number 5412. I'm assuming you want to move on here. Ordinance number 5412, approving the zoning change from R.
Well, I guess probably before we do move on, the only reason that I have not suggested that we consider this further on second and third reading is to allow Councilman Murrin the opportunity also to be here possibly at our next meeting, and I know that affects your time frame somewhat that way, but at this point, it's still moving forward. If there were not 6 votes at this point in time, it would not be moving forward, so.
Again, good point, Councilman. And just FYI, have a city councilman that's struggling to be with us because of treatments that he has taken in there in Omaha. So please understand that we're trying hard, he's trying hard to work with us too on all these kind of things, but I just want to give explanation of why he's not with us tonight. So we're going to go forward then and ask for consideration of ordinance number 5412, approving the zoning change from R3, multiple family residential, to OD, office district on the property located at 107 North Cottonwood or 210 East Brosh.
Your
Looking
Honor,
for-
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5412.
Second.
All right, motion with a second. Do we have a short title there, Beth?
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
Is there discussion?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because this is, I know we've discussed this.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand. This is another element of this that I've thought about. On one hand, there's a well-known issue in the community in which many people, even the position of the city staff, has been that.
Please keep it, Josh, where we are, will you?
Yeah. Well, I think it's relevant to this discussion because I don't.
I think each situation needs to be considered, though, for itself. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. I would say that, I won't get into details, but in one hand, there's, I think, significant argument that protections of certain corridors have to be maintained in terms of industry. And when we look at this in terms of residential neighbors, I'm wondering why that barrier is not also to be respected and maintained from commercial encroachment. And that, I guess that I enter that into discussion because I think it's a relevant point.
I will always tell you, I think we are, as elected body, has to take each and every situation for itself, its own merit. And I'm going to let Councilman Lang, you probably respond to this, but what I'm hearing here as we look at OD, it certainly allows for residential yet. So I'm not quite sure I'm with you. I mean, again, there's already commercial that is existing there and business that is being done. To me, there needs to be some respect given to just exactly what has been stated here. There's been a huge investment made by a business owner. Can he do better? Absolutely, and I think the neighbors have made sure that he's been, will be held accountable. I think he's willing to be that. And again, I can only tell you why it is that we're sitting here tonight. It's for this, as far as this single element, Josh, that's
Sure, I
before us.
understand that. But this wouldn't be on the agenda. This request wouldn't be being made if this compromise hadn't been proposed for the purposes of conditional use permit. So we can talk theoretically about the zoning change, but if I'm correct, there's a conditional use permit draft that's to be reviewed before the planning commission tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning.
And my question on that, though, I suspect that it's probably not going to be reviewed, and Clint might be shedding some light on that.
I was just visiting with the mayor about that, and we had talked with Val about that previously. It's on the agenda before that, or at the planning commission tomorrow, before that conditional use permit could move forward. Ordinance 5411 and 5412 would have to be passed.
That was exactly what I was getting at, and that's why I thought it was somewhat relevant that it did not pass on second and third reading. So the supposition that the cup is going to be on tomorrow's agenda is absurd. Because it can't be, because it's not approved.
Yeah, we would anticipate that tomorrow morning at the planning commission, that would be removed from the agenda. That conditional use permit, action on the conditional use permit, which was tabled, would be removed from the agenda. And only come back then at such time as 5411 and 12 would both need to be passed by this body.
So right now, we're asking for consideration of ordinance 5412, which was given to us with a second. You have done a short title, and we need to vote on that first reading,
Okay.
right? So let's vote.
The council members present voting in the affirmative: Granquist, Lange, Merrill, Clausen, Faust, File. Voting against ordinance 5412, Councilman Moaning. Ordinance 5412 carries on first reading.
All right. Thanks, everyone that has come out and given testimony to, and you'll see this followed up at 2 weeks at our next city council meeting when second and third reading would be had. So we're going to move on to public hearing, maybe, to amend the city code sections. I'm hoping all of you have all these numbers in front of you. I will try very hard to keep this clear. City Code Section 27-74, -78 of 27, 84 of 27, 94 of 27, 104 of 27, 114 of 27, 123 of 27, 134 of 27, 144, 154, 164, 174, 184, and 194, all within Section 27 to change height regulations in zoning districts A, RR, SR, R1, R2, R3, RM, RO, OD, C1, C2, C2A, C3, and BP. Phew. I'm going to.
Reading, isn't it?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get out your agenda. I'm going to open this hearing, and I'm going to guess Val, once again, is going to be the voice.
I swear it's my last time.
No?
This zone code change request is similar to what we did last fall with the industrial districts, where I-1, we had put an allowance in there to ask for a height through a cup, that you can actually have extra height from what the maximum height was. And that is what we're requesting being put in the remainder of the zoning categories in Chapter 27, that it gives you an avenue to ask for that extra height from the maximum with a conditional use permit. Before this, there was no avenue to actually ask that question.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Anyone want to comment on this? Council, any questions or for Val or our city planner down here at the end? That be you, Mr. Lange. If not,
I don't know if that's a compliment.
it is a compliment.
I guess so. The one I look at this, as I've seen things develop, and when I first saw it pop up on R2 and R3, I was going, why? Well, you start looking at multifamily development, and to reach 35 feet is not much of a challenge anymore. You could either have one of two challenges: stay underneath the 35 feet and nobody can fit any utilities in the spaces, or you can get decent size living spaces and be able to fit the utilities in there. So it always kind of surprised me that 35 foot was our limiting. I thought maybe we were in a seismic zone or something, but I don't think so.
Anyone else have any comments or any on this? Do we have a planning commission report on this? Are you ready to rattle them off?
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on June 21st, 2016 to consider amending the official city code, and all of these are in section 27, number 74, 78, 84, 94, 104, 114, 123, 134, 144, 154, 164, 174, 184, and 194 to change height regulations in zoning districts A, RR, SR, R1, R2, R3, RM, RO, OD, C1, C2, C2A, C3, and BP. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the amendment with an 8-0 vote.
All right, I'm going to close this public hearing and ask for consideration of ordinance number 5413 that would be approving that amendment to the city code with all the sections and references as read in.
Your Honor, I move consideration of ordinance 5413 on first reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. Do we have a short title, Beth?
Yes, and I'm going to shorten it. An ordinance of the City of Norfolk amending all those sections and zoning districts, providing for full publication and in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5413 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, as I see this more as a housekeeping situation and coming into the times, I would move that we suspend the rules and pass this ordinance on second and third reading.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance number 5413 on second and third. If you will please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5413 carries on second and third.
Okay, thank you all for coming out in regard to all this open information on the hearings. Now we're going to go into a closed session, and it is only to discuss and to update the elected officials on the potential religious land use and institutionalized persons act litigation. So with that, I would ask for a motion to go into a closed session to discuss such.
So move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative.
Okay, again, I repeat, the motion carried. The closed session is to discuss only the potential religious land use and institutionalized persons act litigation, which will be updated by our city attorney to the elected officials only. So we'll go into the training room.